I have done 2 previous videos on Vista Sculpt and Vectric software. The first one focused mostly on getting models out of Vista Sculpt, and the second one focused on how using some models from Vista Sculpt I actually worked with in VCarve. In this video, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about models in Vista Sculpt and then using those models in Aspire. And the advantage of Aspire is it has so much more opportunities to do different things with those models. And so I'm not going to spend a lot of time in Vista Sculpt. I'm going to just cover a couple things that are of interest. And I think I'll take a model that I've already made in Vista Sculpt and already put into Aspire and carved it, and I'll try to recreate what I did and work through that process. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. If you haven't seen those 2 videos, then I'll put cards up here in the corner, and you can click on those and go watch those first, or you can do that after this. But I'm not going to go as deep into Vista Sculpt as I did in the very first video. So you may want to watch that one before watching this one, because I'm going to kind of cruise through Vista Sculpt here. All right, to start this process in Vista Sculpt, I decided that I would get a shark picture from Midjourney, and I was looking for a specific type of image. Primarily, I wanted one where it looked like the shark was coming at me, and I wanted as little noise in the background. So after looking at all of these sharks, I came through here, and I saw this one right here, and you see there's very little noise in the background. It's pretty plain, and so I thought this one might work well, and so I downloaded this one to my downloads folder, and that started the journey. So once it was in my downloads folder, the next thing I needed to do was to load the image. So I come over here and I hit load image, and I go to my downloads folder, and I saved it as O1 Shark for Vista Sculpt. So I'm going to grab that one there, and I'm going to open that up, and that brings in the image over here. And so the first thing I want to do is take a look at it. It says this feature uses AI to create a depth map, and I said might as well use that. Now you can skip that, but by doing this you get a good look at what it's going to look like when it creates a 3D model. So I like to go there and do that. Takes a few seconds, sometimes up to a minute and a half or so, but it usually doesn't take that long. I will go ahead and speed this up. So when it gets done, it comes up with this preview, and this is what the AI is going to look like. And I thought that looked pretty darn good. So I went ahead and went with that one. And I said, use the AI. And so now it's used the AI, and I've got the image right here. And what I like to do when I am going to use these as individual models, if at all possible, is remove the background. So I'm going to come over here, hit edit image. And you can see that's how the image turned out. I think that looks pretty darn good. And one of the things now on my monitor, you'll see me adjusting the screen heights because for some reason I haven't got it perfected yet. And I have to always play around with the screen height. I don't know if you have that problem in VistaSculpt or not, but now I can see the controls and the image. Of course, you have to, if I scroll my mouse, it goes up and down in view. So I'm going to move it down a little bit so I can see the whole image. Then what I'm going to do here is, as long as I have enough room around it, and I do, I won't have to do anything else. If not, I'd have to expand the image, and since I don't have to, I'm not going to do that at this time. I'll show you that in a different video if you ever want. But what I do want to do is remove the background. So I want to remove the background. So removing the background is going to cost me 1 credit. And do I want to proceed? Yes. And VistaSculpt does a pretty good job of removing the backgrounds, I have found. Hit OK. So now that I've got the background removed, when I make the model, I'm not going to have all the extra noise around it. I won't have to deal with that. All I'll have is this shark in the picture. So I'm going to go ahead and make that and apply it. So I'm going to apply. I'm going to close this window. And now I've got this as my image that it's going to work with. And so I'm going to go ahead and put down generate 3D model. But before I do, I like to add depth to it. So depth and detail. So I normally start out somewhere around 85, 90 or so. And I take my depth normally up to about 5. And so we'll see how that works. Sometimes more, sometimes less. And I'm going to go ahead and generate the 3D model now. And you can see on my computer, it took 1 minute and 49 seconds to generate that model. And I'm gonna just turn it around and stuff, look how deep it is and so forth. And that looks pretty good, but I actually want it to be deeper. And so what I will do is I'm gonna go ahead and make it just a little deeper. And the way I can do that is I can go back over here to depth and increase that. But another way I found that works pretty good is come over here to the thickness. And then I'm going to move that thickness up by pushing on the up arrow. And so by doing that, you can see it's also making it thicker. And giving it more depth and detail at the same time. Let me go ahead and put a back on this by solidify. All right, so now you can see a back. And I'm looking at that, and that's looking pretty good, but I want it just a little deeper. And so what I can do with that is I can move this up over here. And I can come over here, and I'm going to go to 100% on detail. I'm going to move the Z up just a little bit. I find that sometimes helps. Let me move that to 3, let's say. And we're going to generate the 3D model again. Yes. It usually doesn't take as long after you make those minor changes. And as you can see, it only took 45 seconds that time. And now let's take a look at the model. Put the back on it again. That's not required, but I like to. It gives me a better picture. All right, so I'm looking at that there. The nose is up on the top. I think that's looking pretty darn good. So I like that model. And I'm going to go ahead and export that. And so I'll export that 3D model. And now I have a shark to work with. And I'm going to export that to the area where I'm working on the shark. And I'll put here large shark from VistaSculpt. Okay, so that was exported. Now the other thing, if you look at my picture, was I had some coral and I had some seagrass. And I actually generated those by using the generate image function in VistaSculpt. So you can see these are previous images that I generated. And so these are all ones that I've generated. And down here you can see this coral. So this coral I originally brought in and I removed the background. So VistaSculpt remembers that. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply that picture. Then what I did was I generate a 3D model, and I'll move this up to 100%. Depth scale, let's go to 5 or so. Generate 3D model. And it says you want to overwrite your other model, and the answer is yes. This one took a little longer, 2 minutes, 4 seconds. So this is the process I stepped through, and I went through until I had all the models looking the way I wanted them, just playing with the depth and the details and the Z limit, depending on what I want to do, and then exporting those 3D models. Once I had all of the various models exported, I'll say Coral. I was then able to go into Aspire and put my model together. So there were 3 models that I did in VistaSculpt. One was the shark, the other was the coral, and the last one, also using VistaSculpt's artificial intelligence, was the seagrass or seaweed, whatever you want to say. So I did 2 different versions. You see there was one that looked like that, and there was one that looked like this. And I chose this one because I knew I wanted it in isolation and it'd be easier to remove the background. If I had chosen this one, you can see it would have been more difficult to get rid of the background. Now I could have used the whole thing, but I decided to go with this one, and I exported that 3D model. So now that we've got all the models out of VistaSculpt, the next step is to move into the Aspire software and bring those in and manipulate those so that we have a composite image of what I wanted to do, and that'll be the next step. All right, now we're in Aspire. So I've got a new session opened up. Let's go ahead and set this up for what we want to do. I'm going to work with a piece of wood that looks like this. Let me pull that up. So I have this sycamore blank piece of wood, and it measures about, well, let's say 5 inches of usable area here and 10.5625 or so inches this way. So I'm going to set these parameters up. This is sycamore, and this is what I'm going to carve in. So I'm going to set that up over here now. It's a single-sided job, and it's a 10.5625 inches wide and 5 inches in the Y direction, and the thickness is 1.12. And I'm going to have it in the center. That's that mark you see right here that I marked on there. And let's see here. And I'm going to go off the material surface. Actually, I'm going to go off the material surface, hit OK. Let me redo that. After thinking about this and how I'm going to carve, when I carve, the roughing cut is going to take some of this top piece off. And if I set the Z0 off the surface of the machine, then what I'm going to have to do is have another block sitting off to the side that's the exact same size as this machine. And so it's not critical in this case that I go off the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually Z0 off the machine bed here, down here, or over here. That way I'll keep a constant reference point as I carve the machine. So I'm going to change that. So let's go back in here. And that's why you heard me thinking twice about that. And the more I thought about it, I'm going to hit edit over here. I realize I really do need to come off the machine bed. So I'm going to hit OK now. So now I've got that all set up. I no longer need this picture. So I'm going to delete this picture. I need to start setting up the model now. So the first thing I'm going to bring in is the shark. So let me bring in the shark real quickly. I come up here to this create a component from selected, or right here, import a component or 3D model. And I'm going to come in and pick this one with the large shark, deeper mouth open. Hit open. That was the deeper shark that I did. And now, as always, I've got to scale this STL that's coming in from millimeters and inches, because VistaSculpt puts them out in millimeters. And so let's see here. I know that my widest area, it says X, but I've got Y in this direction and X in this direction, and I need to go with the Y. Remember, that was like 5 inches. So I'm going to make this for right now. Oh, I'm going to make it like 3.5 inches. And I've got them so they scale together. I like X, Y, Z. And so I like that. I'm going to hit apply so it stays there. And then I'm going to center the model. And now I'm going to go over here to position and import. And I always just take this down to the bottom. The key is you want to have all of this a light blue. And what that does is that means it's above the modeling plane. And by putting it up here, and make sure I'm going to be able to carve all of it. This part right here, discard data below the 0 plane, you don't have to worry about right now. There is no data, but I'll just uncheck it, or you could leave it checked. It doesn't matter. And then we're going to import this model now into the picture. So here we go. This is what the model looks like currently. And if you want to make changes to it, you can, but there's nothing to change as far as I'm concerned right at the moment. I do want to be able to put this in a dish. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the dish in right now. And so the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to actually use some clip art, and I'm going to come up here to the clip art where it says domes and dishes, and I'm going to bring in a dish. Let's say, let's see, I think I remember it was a 45-degree dish. It might have been 30, but I'm going to use 45-degree for now. And so now you can see I've got a dish here, and I need to now change that. Actually, it's showing as a dome right now. And so I'm going to bring that over here just by using these here to the sides, just visually where I want to go, because I know this represents my little slab, I'll call it, of sycamore. And I need some edge on each side. And I need a little more edge on this side. And now what you see is the shark peeking through the dish or dome. I need to change that dome. if we come over here to the design, or the components, I should say, I need to change that from merge to subtract so that it turns into a dish. So now I have my dish, and I have it so that the shark nose, you can see if we turn it to the side, is sticking slightly outside the dish, and so is the mouth. And I'm going to make some arrangements in a few minutes that might change a little bit of that, but for now, for this time, it looks good. So I'm going to click off that, and one of the things I want to do real quickly is to check the actual depth of my model so far. So I can go to Scale Z Height of Model. All visible components are scaled. And right now it's telling me my current height of my model is 1.236 inches. And remember that my model is actually, my wood is only 1.12 inches thick. So I'm going to keep that in mind here as I look at various aspects. And so if I look at the components and I look just at the shark, let's see what that says the total depth of the shark is. If I come over here, it says it's 0.7293 inches. And if I look at the dome, it says it's 0.89 inches. And I need to switch this out. Let's see if I can switch this to combine mode subtract. It needs to be subtract. So I'm going to come over here to the shark, and let's change that combine mode to merge. And so now let's check the total height of this model. What you'll see me do in the next few minutes, and I left it in because I want you to see how you can check it, is focus on the total height of the model. And this is way too early to be focusing on the total height of the model. I am still learning Aspire myself and getting better and trying to share that information with those of you that are trying to learn. And I just wanted to point out this focus on total height is really kind of a distraction at this point in the model. You should get the whole model built first, and then you can adjust the individual pieces and the total height when you're all said and done. So even though I'm doing that in this video, recognize that I would actually in the future wait until I have my composite model fully built, and then I'll worry about the total adjusted height. Let's move on with the video. So we're still at 1.236 inches, so I'm going to need to change that a bit. So I'm going to take this dish, and I'm going to change that down to 0.6 in this shark. Let's make sure I'm on the shark. I like to look over here, so I'm still on the dish. So the shark now, I'm going to go ahead and take some of that model, and I'm going to move it down slightly. I like the idea of it looking like it's coming out of the dish, so I want that nose to be sticking out. Let's see what we've got for our model now. So we got 0.87, so we got plenty to play with. I can put a little bit more back into the shark. I always come up here and check, because when you've got the models together, it's easy when you think you're clicking on one or the other. So now I can go ahead and make the dome a little bit more. So now we see that the model is 0.8508. So far we're in good shape. I'm going to go ahead and make it just a little bit bigger. I want it just a little bit bigger, so we're going to all right, so we're going to work with that for right now. We'll see what happens as we move through the model. And then the next thing I want to put in here is some coral. So I'm going to go ahead and import some coral. So I come back over here, import a component or 3D model, and we've got coral, and I'm going to open that up. And so that, I don't know what size I'm going to make that. We'll play with that a little bit. Let's just make it about, 1 inch or so. Apply. Now we'll center the model, position and import. Again, bring it down to the bottom here. Hit import. And so now we can see this coral is right here. And I'm just going to take and I'm going to move that coral over to one side. And I want that coral to be bigger than this. So I'm going to go ahead and move that coral over here. And the other thing is that I want the coral component to be down here below I want the shark above the coral. There we go. So the shark will move into the coral, and then the coral's there. I think I could even have, let's try where the dish is. Let's move the dish. That's not quite what I want. So I'm going to go back over here. And now I've got the coral there, and I'm going to duplicate the coral. Hit duplicate, because I want two pieces of coral. And this second piece of coral, I'm going to move over to this area of the model. Okay, so we have those two pieces of coral. Let's see what that's looking like so far. So far, that looks pretty good. And we have the tail behind the coral, which is what I want. I want it to look like the shark is actually coming out of the dish in between the coral. And now I want to add some seagrass. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to import the seagrass that I previously did. Seagrass 1, open. And we're going to scale it. And that's fine where it's already set right there. That looks pretty good. Center model. We're going to position and import. Bring it down to the bottom. Import it. And now I've got my seagrass right here. And I want to move my seagrass over into these areas and make it a little bit bigger. And then we're going to go ahead and duplicate the seagrass like we did of course, I'm going to move this seagrass again down below the shark so that it looks like it's coming through it. I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to bring that other seagrass over in here. So it's coming around through it in that direction. And now what we have, if we look at the model, to me, the goal was to make the shark look like he's coming through the seagrass between the coral. So far, it's looking pretty good. Let me take a look at that for a few minutes and see if there's any changes I want to make. So as I look at this model, overall, I think it's looking pretty good, but I think I would like it to be a little more dramatic with the shark. And there's a lot of empty space here. So I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to come over here to this coral. And again, as I mentioned before, sometimes you have to come over here and click on the model over here to get it to show up here, and then you get all the controls. And so I'm going to make this coral, I'm going to hold shift and make this a little more dramatic, I think. I'm going to bring it a little bigger, and then I'm going to take and move it over here. And then I'm going to come over here, and you can see I've got a little bit of an issue right now because the coral is literally sticking through the shark's mouth. We're going to deal with that in a second. And so now on this one here, on this piece of coral, the other piece of coral over here, over on this side, I want to make that a little bit bigger also. So we're going to make that just a touch bigger. And I'm going to move it so not all of it's sticking out of the dish. I want just a little bit of it. And let that cover a little more of the shark's tail. And in the grass here, I want the grass. I'm going to move it over here. Let's say more right under the shark's mouth. You can see what's happening there, that there's a little piece of grass hanging out here. We're going to deal with that here in a second. And I want it to be bigger also, so I'm going to move it open in that way. And on this piece of grass, I want to move this grass over here so they're kind of overlapping. so that it covers the whole thing. And so now we've got more of the dynamics that I want, but there's a couple issues that you can see. So there's a couple ways we're going to be able to deal with this. So I'd like to have the shark look like it's coming out more. So there's a couple things we can do here. The first thing is I'm going to take the large shark and I'm going to raise the scale of that a little bit so that it looks more dramatic. That's pretty good. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and see, you see the grass back here and the coral back here. So there's a couple things to make it even more dramatic. One of the things that I can do is take this shark and I'm going to click over here and it'll give me the options for tilt and fade. And so if I take and I go to tilt, and I always get this wrong, so don't get overly worried about it. And then I go ahead and set it, and I say I'm going to go from up here about the nose down over to here, and click here, and I'm going to move it. And if it moves in the wrong direction, I'll just reset it. And I'm going to see that, you see I'm pulling the nose out more, which is what I wanted to do. Make it more dramatic coming out of this dish. So now I've got that. The next one is this coral, which is sticking out of the back over here. So let me grab that coral, this coral right here, and I'm going to take and move this where I can see it. Let's take the base down a little bit, see what that'll do. There we go. So this still looks pretty good over here. And I pulled it out so that it's no longer coming out of the shark's mouth back here. And you can see that looks pretty good right there. This seagrass, let's take a look at the seagrass here for a second. So the seagrass, I'm going to take and move that down just a touch. Make sure it's not coming out where we don't want it coming out. Seagrass right here. All right, I think I went too much, so I'm going to hit Control Z. There we go. I like that better. And it's kind of sticking out of that coral versus the coral being in front. Overall, I would be okay with that, but we can fix that too. Why don't I just take and take the coral. I'm going to take the coral and I'm going to just take the scale up just a touch. No, that didn't have the impact I wanted, so we'll hit Control Z on that. And I'm going to do the fade this time. And I usually have a 50-50 chance. I usually see I'm fading it the wrong way. So we're going to go back over here and set it. I was originally trying to go this way and my click didn't take place. Now you can see the grass in the back there is fading down. And that's going to work pretty good right there. So now I don't have the grass coming out here. I don't have it coming through here, but that's okay also. I can live with that. I can actually probably adjust that just a little bit. I wouldn't mind some grass coming out there. What you see me doing here is just playing a little bit with the various heights to fine-tune the model. And you saw me turn off the dome so I could get a better look at what's going on with these individual parts and go back and forth between them. Okay, I'm tilting that the wrong way. And that's okay. The grass just, I see that little piece, but it may just be the wrinkle in the coral. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. I'm going to turn back on the dome. And we see how everything looks. And I'm thinking that that looks pretty darn good, actually. And so I'm going to go ahead and let's take that model right there. And I'm going to create a new level. And I'm going to come up here and insert new level. And I'm going to call this level components. Rename that level to components. And so that I don't lose any of the actual individual components. And on this level, I'm going to rename that composite as my composite model. And I'm going to take and have this level active. Of course, I lost the T. I think that's right. So that level active, you can see it's highlighted. And now I'm going to use the feature of coming in here and taking the visible model, this model right here, and I'm going to go ahead and create a component from the visible model. And now if you look at the model tree, you can see I've got copy of visible model on the components. Now it's going to be really high if I look at it now because it's going to take both of them. They're both still on. So I'm going to take the individual components. I'm going to turn those off. And I'm ready to set up the toolpath. So let's go set up the toolpath. I come over here to the toolpath section, lock that in. First thing you want to do is you want to hit set. It tells me my model thickness exceeds material thickness. So we're going to set this model to 1.12 minus 0.02 equals, apply, hit close, and now you see the red warning went away. And I'm going to hit 0.02 inches, and then I'm going to go ahead and carve it. Now, I'm going to stop right now and tell you something that I did wrong. When I was doing this model originally and setting this up to carve, this is exactly what I did. And I was thinking I was in good shape. But what's wrong with this? If we look real quickly, you can see by looking at the coloration over here that I've got some material on top of my model, but not in the bottom of my model. What does that mean? Well, that means that I have no material behind my model. So when I carved this, and you'll see this when I show you the carve, what happened was back here where the deepest parts of the models are, I actually carved right through the wood. I didn't go into my spoiler board because I had gone down to just 0, but I actually carved right through my wood, and then I had to do a quick repair on this final piece of art. And so be very careful of that when you're adjusting your model, you don't have 0 down here at the bottom. Because if you have gap below is 0, or you accidentally set it to the bottom, then what can happen is, and you have no material, is you can carve through your model. Keep that in mind. So I don't want that to be the case with this one in the future if I ever want to carve it again. So now I'm going to go ahead and change this to something that probably would have been better. So I can come over here to set this model. And this is not what I do. This is what I use, but this is what I would do in the future for the same size. And instead of 1.1, since my material is 1.12 inches, I'm going to want material on the top and the bottom. I'm going to set my overall model to 1 inches, apply, and then hit close. What you can see is I've got, and I'm going to take this down to 0.02. And the reason I do that is so that if there's any undulations in the top of my board, I can get through those. And the gap below the model now is 0.1 inches, which is slightly less than 1/8 of an inch. So it's between 1/8 of an inch and 1/16 of an inch. And that should give me some back on the model so that I don't end up going through it. And so hit OK. And now that I have that, I can go ahead and set up my toolpaths. And as always, I go through and set it up first with a roughing bit. I've got this Golden Boy 1-inch rougher, and boundary offset 0.02, 0.25 won't really matter. The one thing that let me hit close. The one thing I did forget to do, because I've got a dish here to make that dish carve clearer, I should have added a zero plane. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit Shift key and click on that. And now I've got a zero plane across there. And what that will do is make sure that the dish part will carve much smoother. So now that I've got the dish in there, let's come back over here now to the roughing. I'm not worried. I've got 0.25, but it really, no big deal right there because it's actually going all the way out to the end, but I'll leave that in there. That makes sure it gets past the edge of the material. And we're going to come over here and we're going to do a raster toolpath. 45 degrees is what I like, and calculate. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do a finish toolpath, and I'm going to use a 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. I think when I did this carve, I actually put in a 1/4 inch also. So I'm going to select, and I normally, for my 3D carving, when I'm doing a 1/4 inch, use a 46294 ball nose. Take this up to hardwood. Hit select. And now you can see it placed it first, then a 1/8 inch, and then a 1/16 inch. I'm going to do the model boundary, 0.125, and we're going to raster 45 degrees, hit calculate. Let's make sure these are all 45 degrees. All right, hit calculate. All right, I got it calculated. Everything's calculated. Let's do a preview and see what it looks like. So right there is my roughing toolpath, and you saw that it took off material across the top of here because I had the zero planing, so it's doing the whole model, which includes the zero plane. And if I had zeroed off the top on the material, you can see that now the material height has changed after my zero plane and after my first finishing pass. So that's why you saw me Z0 originally off of the bed. That way it'll be continuously the same height. So now that's the first finishing pass with a 1/4 inch ball nose. And overall, that's not looking too bad. And this is the 1/8 inch ball nose right now. Okay, finished up with the 16th. So all in all, I think that looks pretty good. And so with that composite, then I am going to go ahead and go carve this thing, and I'll put that next in the video. Let me point out a couple key points. The difference between using V-Carve and Aspire is what you just saw me demonstrate. I was able to take each of these STLs in here and arrange them the way I wanted to arrange them, where in V-Carve, you're only limited to one STL that you can use. So anything else you would have tried to add in here would have had to come from the V-Carve clip art library or models that you bought specifically from Vectric in their design and make. You couldn't bring in additional STLs. Where using Aspire, you can actually bring in the different STLs. The other advantage is that I was able to tilt and fade various points of this model to get the effects that I wanted. And so you couldn't do that in V-Carve. You can only do that in Aspire because of these extra modeling tools that you have available to you. So I'm able to make a more personalized or custom model, bringing in individual pieces and parts. And that was the advantage of the Aspire. And that's what you always have to think about, whether it's worth the cost to you or not. If you don't want to make these kind of models and so forth, it's probably not. But if you want to make these custom models, then, and you were wondering what's the difference between VCarve and Aspire, that's it. As far as VistaSculpt, there is no difference. A couple things, is that you can bring in a whole VistaSculpt model into VCarve and carve that as you want. So with that, let's go ahead and carve the model. At this point, I've got my board mounted and I'm getting ready to carve. You can see where my Z0, my XY0 is marked in the center, so that's where I'm starting from. My Z0 is off the machine bed, and so now I'm all set up to carve, and that's what you're going to be watching. And one thing I want you to notice is that although in the video I just finished, I used a raster toolpath for my roughing pass. In this one, you'll see I actually used a Z-level toolpath. I forgot that I had done that, and I'm not going to go back and change the video. I'm using a CIC workshop roughing bit, and so that's what you're watching me go through right now. And by the end of this, we'll have the roughing pass done, and I'll put it on super speed. No reason for you to watch it slowly unwind. This is what it looked like after the roughing pass using the Z-level strategy, and the next step is to go and use the 1/4 inch ball nose for the first phase of the finishing cuts. And that's what you'll be watching. And as I was carving with this 16th inch ball nose, that's when I noticed this. You can see where I carved through the material, and I had to veneer another piece of sycamore on the back, and then I was okay, but oops. As you can see, I found some sycamore material in my supply, so I thinned it up, glued it on the back here, and this is me cutting that veneer to the right size using my bandsaw. Where there's a will, there's a way. Well, that's it for this Vista Sculpt to Aspire software video, along with the carve that I actually did using the techniques. I hope you picked up a couple tricks and tips. I hope you're being able to get out into the shop and make some things and have some fun with this stuff. And a couple key points I wanted to emphasize is when you're in Vista Sculpt, make sure that you are taking out the backgrounds if possible if you're going to use Aspire, even if you're going to use VCarve. But if you're going to use Aspire, that's helpful because then you can take and put composite pieces together. If you're going to VCarve, you probably will be wanting a frame or something else around it, depending on how you're going to use it. Make sure that when you're in Aspire and you're setting up your toolpaths, not to set the model on the bottom so that you end up carving through it like I did. And the biggest thing is to enjoy yourself. As always, I ask you to help me out with, likes, comments, and shares. The same thing other YouTubers ask to be helped out, It's the only way that I get my audience up and get my videos out to other people and get a chance to make a buck or two. If I can help out at all, just let me know. My email is in the contact information for the channel. And if for some reason you didn't get to see the other VistaSculpt videos, look at the side there, and I'll put up a couple cards here at the end for you to click on there so you can go see those previous videos. With that, have a great day.